Howdy, folks. Artist and author Presto DiBaggio here with my amazing friends. My guests today are Mike DiBaggio.
Hello.
And Kim Holm.
Hello.
So we have Kim on for two reasons. One, he's a really awesome artist. His artwork is, well, most of it is at once horrifying but also beautiful from a technical standpoint.
Oh, thank you.
And the other reason is, like Mike and I releasing our Ascension Epoch work under Creative Commons, he also releases his work under Creative Commons, although he uses a slightly different license. I guess, firstly, Kim, if you want to tell people a little bit about what you do and where people can find you, and then we'll dive into a couple more detailed questions.
Yeah. What should I say? Right now, I'm sort of a failed cartoonist. I used to want to be a cartoonist and spend all my life working on comics or thinking about comics, and then having to do other stuff to work. And a few years back, I took the decision to say, I have failed. I will become a damned artist instead. I've fallen into the field of visual arts, or fine arts, as you'd call it. I do a lot of dark stuff. Do a lot of. I sort of fell into drawing extreme metal concerts live, standing by the side of the stage, headbanging in the mosh pit sometimes while drawing. And that's sort of spun my whole both career and disposition out in better and darker paths. And now I've done a lot of work for different bands, and I sell a lot of work, or a few works here and there, all over the world. And yeah, you can find me on, if you search for Den Unge Herr Holm, which is spelt exactly how it sounds. I hope you guys do some links. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, we'll also do links right in the description, so no.
Yeah, so you can search for me there and find me on Facebook or Instagram or on minds.com or YouTube even. I'm all over the place.
We are too, so we get that. But no, I think that's really interesting how, and I hear from like various people that's kind of like how life works. Like you sort of fall into a niche, and it may not be the niche that you set out for yourself, but I'm assuming you're enjoying yourself now, at least with what you're doing.
Yeah, I've always heard failing upwards as a derogatory statement, but now think I'm failing upwards in a good way.
So go ahead.
It's sorry. It's very interesting that you got into doing artwork for these heavy metal bands and stuff like that. Is that something that someone from a band asked you to do, or did you just go to a concert one day and start painting, and then it caught on from there?
Well, I was a professional illustrator mostly and comic book artist, which meant I was broke all the time. And I had tickets for the Hole in the Sky festival here in Bergen in 2010. And I realized that I can't afford to go, even though I have the tickets. But I was late trying to sell the tickets. So I couldn't sell them. So I decided, hey, if I have to go, why not bring a sketchbook? And then I started sketching during the concerts, and sort of hoping that someone would buy me a beer, because people buy beer to people who are drawing sometimes. That happens. It was a theory. It was the only theory I had, and by the first concert, I saw that there is something happening here. And by the second evening of the festival, I was, at that time, I was still sitting at a table drawing, and then running to the mosh pit and headbanging, and then running back and drawing some more. And I just, I realized this is something unique. What I'm drawing sort of looks like what the music feels like.
It,
And if I'm a bit groggy today, it's because last night I was at a release party for a band called Psychopath, which I've done the album artwork for, and I was drawing in pitch darkness with strobe lighting, and my cousin was in the audience, and he's 18, and he was in the mosh pit, and I'm turning 40 this year, but I will not be out-moshed by an 18-year-old. So I had to run into the mosh pit, and that was a big mistake. And I'm paying for it today. So if I'm more incoherent and rambling than usual, I blame the mosh pit.
Not at
that's all
all, not
right.
at all. But
Well, you didn't answer the big question. Did someone buy you buy you a beer at that first concert?
No, absolutely not.
But good things still came of it anyway.
Oh, yes, indeed.
I think it was very interesting when you said that your art looks the way the music feels, because when I was, it's interesting when you say that you felt that you think your art looks the way the music feels, because it absolutely does. When I, went to your website and I looked at it, there's a real energy to your work. And can I ask what your favorite medium or mediums are?
Well, the concert thing sort of happened because my favorite medium is ink, and I had been since I think 1998. I found this brush pen called the Pentel Color Brush, and I started doing a lot of black and white landscape sketches with that. I even spent a few summers earning my living selling black and white landscape sketches to tourists. And sort of, I've always worked a lot in ink and a lot with black and white, but I always liked experimenting, and I've worked digitally, and I'm learning how to paint these days. And uh, but I've always returned to the pure black and white ink, and also to the Pentel color brush. And if I had brought anything else than a Pentel color brush to the first concert I drew, I would not be doing it today, because
Mm-hmm.
there's something about that specific type of brush pen which you can do all these weird techniques. Like it's got a very flexible brush tip, and you can overload it with ink, and you can make these ink spatters, and the ink is kind of crappy, so if it sticks to your skin, you will not wash it off in a week. But if it sticks to the paper and it gets just a drop of water, then it will just flow all over the place. Um, and that sort of works very very well for the concert drawing, because I try to draw something that's happening on the stage and it doesn't quite work, so why not just dip some fingers into the beer and then smear
Mm-hmm.
the ink out, and then it works. And it's got this huge uh, potential for very, very quick improvisation. And you can do all these types of fun effects with it. So my favorite medium is definitely ink and brush, and more specifically, I do love the Pentel color brush. I'm not sponsored by Pentel yet.
That's how
Uh,
That's how it works with all of us. It's like, oh, I wish I could get sponsored by my favorite art supply companies.
Me too.
I don't think they're even my favorite art supply company. I just really like their
That one,
fantastic brush. Yes.
um, I that's an interesting way of putting it. So would you say that you evolved a style after you found the medium you liked, or was that a style that you were trying to go for earlier in your life, and then you sort of found the medium that let you do it?
Yeah, I think my style has sort of been consistently evolving since I was probably a young teenager, and I recently looked through some of the artwork I did when I was 14, 15 years old, and it still got the sort of the hallmarks of what has become my style today. It's got the very expressive, very gritty, broken brush strokes, uh, you know, lines going everywhere. It's got that aspect, and it's got this yearning towards something more figurative, or even, I don't dare say academic, but something, there are these two impulses in me all the time which are quarreling, and one of them is the impulse to be just primitive and ugly and primal, and you know I think Frank Miller once said about the art of Todd McFarlane is that it's the art that appeals to you while you're 14 years old, and with your and you're etching swastikas in your what's they call your table at school. What's that
Your
thing called?
desk. Your
Your
desk.
desk, yes. And
Yeah, when you're going through
you're
that
just
phase.
etching stuff to tell the world to f off,
Right.
and a large part of me just wants to do that. And then I have this other part of me that's always admired really technical artists who are, just magnificent uh, in how they control their output. And my problem is that every time I'm learning more about the technical aspects, I'm trying to push the correctness of the drawing. I end up being so bored, and I dislike the result. And then whenever I do something really primal and primitive, I end up looking at it and saying, but that's not correct. And so,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm always torn between these two impulses. And I think that's been more or less the same since forever.
That's pretty fantastic, actually. And I will say, from looking at your work, it looks like you walk the line well. You can see, some of them you lean a little more this way, and some of them you lean a little more that way. But especially in ink, I think, because um, like with ink, there's a certain amount of control you're giving up, unless you're one of these people that is very careful as you're doing ink work, and even then, if you're using a brush, you can't actually control the line width, and I think there's a lot you give up when you work with ink, and I personally am very, very bad at working with ink and a brush. I don't like the amount of control that I give up, but uh, and then with some artists, they give up too much control, and to be quite honest, it can look a mess. But
Well,
I
my art does look a mess at
but
times.
it does
But
sometimes, but for the most part, it looks like you found that nice balance and that fine line, and that's actually one of the things I find very impressive about your art. You do have that sense of motion and that sense of atmosphere, but you can also very clearly tell what you're drawing, and you can see that you've spent time on the technical aspects too.
If I can just add, I'm paging through some of your more recent Patreon shares, and I hope we can show some of these on the video so that the
please
audience,
do
yeah,
show
because
anything you want. Yeah.
I think the audience will see instantly what we're talking about. It is certainly very primal, but there's an enormous amount of detail. And I'm not an artist, I'm a writer, but you can instantly tell what these things are, and there's even in this like black inky depth of there's lots of there's detail in what's not there. If I don't really know how else to express that, but I really encourage anybody listening to this video who does horror and macabre related RPG books to seek out Kim and his artwork, because I think his art, some of his art here is like the perfect expression of what I think good RPG artwork should be for that genre, for the the frightening, the macabre, the skip, but also like the very very emotional as well, and it's top notch stuff.
If I can just say something about it, what Shell said about walking the line. I think that's sort of where it is. And just to delve deeper into my musical darkness, I am really inspired by how Willie Nelson uses his voice, because if you hear his recordings from the 60s, he's pitch perfect. He is always on the mark every time. Then during the 70s, he gets really bored doing that. And he starts throwing his voice as far off key as you can without messing it up, and as far off rhythm as he can. He waits as long as he can to begin whatever line he's singing, and then he stutters through the rhythm, and then he goes into these amazing flows, and then he takes them way too long or way too short, and he's always on that line. And if you're listening to his live recordings, you can hear that sometimes he's way off that line. Sometimes what he's trying to do doesn't quite work. And it's because if you're truly on that line, then you sort of have to accept that the greatness you can potentially find by balancing that line also comes with not the danger, but the certainty that you will also fail at times, and that's just part of the whole expression.
Well, there you go, Shell. I don't think you'll have another artist talk about how their art is like Willie Nelson's off-key singing. So I think that's right there.
Yeah, I was going to say that's pretty epic. That's one for the history books.
No, but we can all learn a lot from Willie Nelson.
Absolutely. If I can at least temporarily shift the question a bit from the artistic styles and
I was going to say that is a good point to hop to our other subject. I mean, we can hop around all we want, but
but before we get into the Creative Commons stuff, which of course is a great interest to us, I wanted to ask him, since he does so much macabre horror monster themed artwork, what if he has any artistic or whether, and by that I mean literary, movies, also other artists in the horror genre that he really likes and influenced him.
Yeah, I fell in love with H.P. Lovecraft, or at least his writing, when I was a teenager, and he has been sort of an artistic figure that has been both haunting and guiding me during most of my development. And I've done a comic book adaptation called Pickman's Model of one of his stories that I think is sort of one of my better works, one of my best works, I would say. And sort of in the same way, I find inspiration in Willie Nelson's voice. I find a very deep inspiration in H.P. Lovecraft's whole project, which he was obsessed with writing not only fear, but what he called the oldest and strongest type of fear, the fear of the unknown. And for him, if it was truly a fear of the unknown, it had to be fear of the totally unknown. And the totally unknown is indescribable, it's unnameable, it is something you literally can't put words to. And that was what he was trying to write about. And if you're a writer writing in words, and your whole life goal is to write about things that you can't put into words, and that's a pretty epic undertaking. And you know, definitely you can see quite clearly that Lovecraft failed, because Cthulhu is on South Park and everyone knows what Cthulhu looks like, which means Lovecraft hasn't described the undescribable. He has described something describable.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I think he came a lot closer than anyone else to really describing something you can't describe. And that sort of this is my fascination with horror and with art and with everything. It is you have to set these goals, which are unattainable, because then you always have something to reach forward to. And I don't know if that answered the question, but yeah, Lovecraft
Yes.
definitely has been the my entry point into, not my entry point, but my my main inspiration in delving into the more macabre is definitely Lovecraft.
I think what you said there is really the perfect metaphor for art itself. You're trying to describe something you can't put into words, so you don't use words in your case. You make these really hideous, but hideous in a good way drawings, and I think they're really really powerful and evocative.
Yeah, but it's if you just take Lovecraft's quest and transfer it to my metal concert sketches, it's basically the same thing, because he was trying to use words to describe something you can't use words for, and I'm trying to use still images to describe motion and energy. So it's hopeless. I will never succeed, but I if I try hard and long, I might get close, or closer than most other people, I hope.
I was first exposed to Kim's artwork on a YouTube channel I watch often called Marsh Makes Comics. He was a guest artist on one of the early bird artcasts. I've been a guest on that channel, by the way, too. But I was really struck by the energy and the, quite frankly, sometimes terrifying concepts in Kim's artwork. And as you know, well, as you may know, in our Ascension Epoch books, we have a lot of, weird fiction and supernatural stuff and whatnot. So Mike and I write articles for Bexham's Bizarre magazine, which is focused on RPG tabletop gaming. And we were particularly doing a article on Manly Wade Wellman's Deep School, and in particular the Deep School Manual, and the creepy and isolated and sometimes downright mysterious look of Kim's art just meshed with that idea so well. So since it was Creative Commons, obviously we could use it, which is the joy of Creative Commons. And we put together this article, and I think you'll agree that Kim's artwork just goes so well with the concept. It's worth noting that Mike and I are trying to find ways to bring this sort of RPG material or our background material out to you guys sooner. We're looking into maybe making books or ebooks on DriveThruRPG, or perhaps doing zines. If you have any interest in any of those things, maybe shout out what Ascension Epoch stuff you would like to see in the comments. Alright folks, so I hope you enjoyed this video. We're actually going to have 2 more videos with Kim on in the future, so watch out for those. And in the meantime, have an awesome day. Presto, over and out.
Farewell and adieu to you, fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu to you, ladies of Spain.